Hi, Dr. Amy here. I am the editor and creator of Cura Healing Magazine, and the December edition of Cura is a lot about the anxiety and the hard feelings that can come up around the holidays for a lot of my patients, a lot of people. It can be a really challenging time if you're around family members that you don't particularly like, or, you're stressed about money. All these things can be really heightened during the holidays. And I think as human beings, we tend to want to get rid of those hard feelings, those difficult feelings quickly. And alcohol can be a big factor in doing that. It's like a numbing agent, right? Same thing with overspending or scrolling our social media until 2 a.m. All these things sort of help us numb out. And as I was creating this talk, I did the Truth About Alcohol, Healthspan, and Lifespan for a recent college lecture. And it just made me think. It made me stop and think about alcohol's place in my life because I am very health conscious. But alcohol does tend to show up a lot more during the holidays with holiday parties and all the festivities that tend to really bring us together around alcohol. So this putting this talk together was eye-opening for me, and I hope it is for you too. So on the agenda today is we're just going to talk quickly about definitions, alcohol metabolism, and its effects in our body. I'm going to finish with my favorite mocktail recipe. And if you have questions, you can always reach out to me on Instagram. You can connect with me at dramywarren.com or at curahealingmagazine.com. So starting with definitions is really important because when you read like a research article about alcohol, they talk about a drink, right? And so just defining what does that mean? They also talk a lot about moderate drinking and heavy drinking. So the definition for moderate drinking is 2 drinks or less in a day for a male and 1 drink or less in a day for a woman. And then heavy drinking is defined as 15 drinks or more per week in a male and 8 drinks or more per week in a female. So those are the 2 important definitions when you're looking at an article that talks about moderate or heavy drinking. These are the definitions that you'll want to keep in mind. And then also, what is a drink, right? So 12 fluid ounces of a beer, 5 fluid ounces of a wine, a glass of wine, or 1.5 fluid ounces of a distilled spirit. So my glass of wine is typically a little larger than this guy, but this is, I'm trying to show it to you here, this is 5 ounces, right? So one of these for me a day is considered moderate drinking. And I'll have to admit that my pours are usually a little heavier than that. So it's just important that we know what we're dealing with, right? When we're talking about how much and how much is there an okay amount? And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit too. So let's go through alcohol's journey through the body. I'm just going to briefly scan through this. So when you take that sip of whatever sort of alcohol beverage that you're drinking, it's ethanol is that we're looking at, and it instantly starts to be broken down. It goes to the liver primarily, and it's broken down by an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase, or ADH, and it transforms that ethanol into a toxic compound called acetaldehyde. And acetaldehyde is a known carcinogen, and in fact, alcohol has been classified as a group 1 carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer decades ago. And this is the highest risk group, and it shares that classification with asbestos, radiation, tobacco. So all of these toxic compounds share that class 1 carcinogen status, and alcohol is in that. So much of the research on alcohol metabolism has been focused on this intermediate byproduct, this acetaldehyde, that occurs early in the breakdown process. And although acetaldehyde is short-lived in the body, it gets broken down into acetate rather quickly. It has the potential of causing significant damage because it is so toxic. And this is particularly evident in the liver, where the bulk of alcohol metabolism takes place. Some alcohol metabolism also occurs in other tissues, including the pancreas, the brain, the GI tract, and all of these areas are at risk of DNA damage with this toxic compound acetaldehyde. And irreversible DNA damage can happen, and that leads to cancer. So this is why alcohol is so damaging in our bodies. So we're going to go through each one of these organ systems and talk about its effects in alcohol. So starting with the brain, alcohol interferes with the brain's communication pathways and can affect the way the brain looks and works. Alcohol makes it harder for the brain areas controlling balance and memory and speech and judgment, all of those areas to do their job. And this results in a higher likelihood of injuries and negative outcomes. I can't tell you how many times I've seen patients come in, especially, my elderly, maybe not so agile patients, have a glass or two of wine and they fall and break a hip or break a wrist, something like that. It happens very frequently. But alcohol affects the brain by slowing down neurotransmission. Prolonged or excessive alcohol consumption can contribute to long-term and irreversible neurologic damage, and it can increase your risk for conditions such as dementia. So going to the stomach and esophagus, the alcohol can irritate the lining of the stomach and the esophagus, leading to increased inflammation and conditions such as gastritis or ulcers. Additionally, it relaxes the esophageal sphincter. So if you can see my mouse here, this is the esophageal sphincter, and alcohol relaxes that and allows that high acid to come up from the stomach into the esophagus and cause damage there. And it can develop into conditions like gastroesophageal reflux disease or GERD. Excessive drinking is strongly associated with gastric and esophageal cancers. So moving on to the liver and pancreas. So even moderate alcohol consumption really places a significant burden on the liver because that's where all that metabolism is happening, right? So this can lead to inflammation in the liver. It can lead to fatty liver and ultimately can lead to cirrhosis in severe cases. So the pancreas is also affected by alcohol consumption. It can cause inflammation there too. It can cause things like pancreatitis. But it also hinders the ability of the pancreas to regulate blood sugar levels and aid in digestion. So that's the pancreas's primary job, is to secrete insulin to help us regulate our blood sugar. And so that process gets hindered when we're drinking. Liver and pancreatic cancer are also very much associated with moderate and excessive alcohol consumption. And I just wanted to touch briefly on fatty liver because it's something that I see so commonly in primary care. You would know that you have fatty liver primarily just by getting like a yearly set of labs. So every year for most patients, I will order blood work, which includes a liver function panel. And if I see liver enzymes abnormal, particularly AST, ALT, bilirubin, those types of liver tests, if I see those elevated, it's usually from fatty liver. So when you're looking at this metabolic pathway of alcohol, you'll see that at the end, if we don't utilize those calories from the alcohol, it gets stored into fat, and that goes and gets stored in the liver. Fatty liver is also very common in patients who are overweight. It's just when we are eating processed foods and sugary foods and high carb meals, all that excess calorie gets stored into the liver. As one of the areas it gets stored into is the liver, and that can just cause inflammation. And fatty liver in and of itself isn't usually dangerous, but over time it can increase your risk of liver disease, liver fibrosis, and cirrhosis if it's not managed. So moving on to breast health. So drinking even a small amount of alcohol is linked with an increased risk of breast cancer in women. So alcohol can raise estrogen levels in the body, which may explain some of the increased risk. Alcohol does this by slowing down the breakdown of estrogen in your liver. So that's where estrogen, your hormones, get broken down in the liver. And when the liver is busy trying to metabolize alcohol, it affects the bio breakdown of estrogen. It also occurs like an upregulation of testosterone to estrogen happens as well. So this is we think is the pathway of this association between cancer and breast cancer and alcohol consumption. So according to the NIH, the overall estimated association is approximately 30 to 50% increased risk of breast cancer with just 1 to 2 drinks a day. So we'll move on to the heart. So excessive alcohol intake can lead to high blood pressure, heart failure. It can lead to stroke. Excessive drinking can cause problems such as cardiomyopathy, a disorder that affects the heart muscle. So what's more, alcohol can contribute to obesity, right? Going back to that excess calories leading to fat storage, and obesity is definitely associated with increased list of health problems, diabetes, high blood pressure, stroke, heart disease. So excess, just the calories in and of themselves can be very damaging. And then finally, the colon, we're going to talk about this for just a moment. Alcohol has been linked with a higher risk of cancers in the colon and the rectum. The evidence for this is generally stronger in men than it is in women, but the studies have found a link in both sexes. Several studies have shown that the risk of developing colon cancer increases after just each glass of alcohol you drink. So even one standard drink of 10 grams of alcohol can increase your risk. And different types of alcohol were also tested and showed similar results. So there was no difference between red wine and a cocktail. So they all had a similar risk. So the conclusion is there really is no safe level of drinking. The risks and the harms associated with drinking alcohol have really been systematically evaluated over the years and are well documented. And the World Health Organization has now published a statement in the Lancet Public Health Journal that when it comes to alcohol consumption, there really is no safe amount that does not affect our health. So that one glass of red wine a day, while there may be a tiny benefit to the heart, there is way more risk than there is benefit. So the less we drink, the greater the positive impact on health span and longevity. And when you're thinking about maybe cutting back on your drinking or stopping altogether, it's really important to find healthy alternatives that work for you and just planning ahead. So if you're going to that holiday party or you're having a party at your home, just planning ahead with some things that you can either bring with you to share. My favorite mocktail right now is called a See You on Wednesday. And it's 2 jalapeno slices, a cilantro sprig, and a little bit of agave nectar, and you muddle it in your glass. Then you add celery juice, lime juice, then you strain it, put a pinch of salt, tahini for the rim, and a celery spear. It's super yummy and delicious. I also have a couple more of my favorite mocktail recipes in this month's edition of Cura Magazine. So check those out. You can, again, reach out to me at dramywarren.com, curahealingmagazine.com, or Instagram. I'd love to connect with you if you have any questions. Happy holidays. Take care.